Thanks everybody for making the time for this workshop. I am Tom Weismiller with Northwest Alabama Economic Development Alliance, also known as C3, and we are a three-county economic development and marketing alliance that our area includes Fayette, Lamar, and Marion counties. I'm going to give just a brief little background on why we're doing the workshop and kind of where we're going with this. Thank you all for attending this workshop. If this is a partnership between Innovate Alabama, our organization C3, we created this new initiative called Time, which I'm going to talk briefly about. The Small Business Development Center, which Warren is aligning with. He's a consultant with them, and some other partners as well, but those are the key ones. Little bit of just overview of kind of the plan of attack here. I'm going to give this brief background information. Warren will do a 55-minute workshop. Now, I talked to him about it, and he said, feel free to ask questions along the way. If the Q&A and the business workshop kind of end up intermingling because we're asking questions along the way, that's fine. I think we have till 7:30. So hopefully you all have that amount of time. But the goal is to really, it's a conversation and to try to start thinking about if you want to participate in the business plan competition, but even if you don't, business planning is really critical for business success. So a little bit of background. We traditionally our focus is a market to try to attract new industries into the region, a lot of times manufacturers, or we work with our existing manufacturers. Something like 32% of our population workforce work in manufacturing, which is a really high number. And that's really important to us. That continues to be important to us. But I think in the last couple of years, we've kind of branched out a little bit, done a little more small business development. We try to partner with some of the chambers and other organizations on small business. I actually have a background before I did economic development. I did downtown redevelopment and kind of worked on sort of the Main Street side of things. And so I'm always happy to help if I can in some of those areas. And then more recently, Innovate Alabama was formed, but they've been putting a lot of money out for small businesses and for nonprofits and so forth. We applied for a grant, we received funds, and we are using it for this initiative we're calling Time. And with Time, that's an acronym, not to get kind of into the weeds on it, but we're doing, on the I side, for example, innovation and technology, that we're doing some technology things with the schools. We're trying to get drones and 3D printers and that kind of thing into the schools and get kids more interested in technology type careers. There's a new opportunity, we feel like, in rural areas to do technology stuff that maybe 20 years ago wasn't really as accessible in a rural area. And manufacturing is always important to us. And on the Time part of that, we're doing kind of advanced manufacturing, modernizing manufacturing, where we're doing partnerships with companies that are trying to do robotics and technology sort of manufacturing. So that's still a key component. But then there's also the innovation part. And this is kind of where that's coming from. A little more small business entrepreneurship. That's a high priority for Innovate Alabama. So you may want to kind of learn more about their programs. And it's a key part of this initiative. As part of that, we're doing a number of small business entrepreneurship programs with the support of that Innovate Alabama grant, those grant funds. It's not just the small business plan competition. Some of you all probably came in. It looks like I got a number you were able to sign up for our time zone platform. It's basically a small business platform. Right now, we're kind of using it to get things up and running. But the goal with that really is to turn it over to you all as a tool, a resource where you can communicate with your peers in the business community, maybe find an accountant, find people like Warren that can assist, consult, and that kind of thing. It's really supposed to be a small business platform, and where the small businesses kind of take it over and hopefully use it. We're doing this small business plan competition. One thing I'll mention, the I think sometimes people get intimidated by the idea of doing a small business plan. We'd like it to be as easy as possible. The Warren's going to go through all the steps, but you can write your business plan really easily these days. We got before we even started this, there was another grant that the state gave us to get computer workstations in 3 of our counties where you could go in and sign up and use this software platform called Live Plan. And you don't have to work out of the library. It just that's one place you can go in and basically log in and get your account started. And then you can go home on your laptop. You can be working at your small business on your laptop using LivePlan. And LivePlan will walk you through the whole process of creating a business plan. It'll kind of ask you questions in a way I mean, you deal the type of questions you deal with on a regular basis anyway, and turn that into a business plan, and it'll look pretty. It'll have graphs and charts and everything in it. So, point being, there's a business plan competition, but we're trying to do a number of things. Like we'll probably at some point, as people like you come into the platform on time zone, and hopefully we start getting a community there. We may start doing some events where it's kind of like happy hour type events where we can invite speakers that will talk to you whatever topics you're interested in as a small business owner, and kind of network and peer connect and that kind of thing. So the small business plan competition is part of a larger effort to try to support small businesses and entrepreneurship. This one particular piece, though, is a $15,000 grant we'll probably do 2 or 3, depending upon how much response we get, small businesses in our region. And the goal is really to help you grow. This is for I'll explain, it's either for new businesses or existing businesses, but it's made possible by a grant from Innovate Alabama with the assistance of the Small Business Development Center, and Bevel State Community College also has small business development programs, and a number of other partners. Before we kind of get started on that, the deadline's January 17th, so we have some time, but we want to get people familiar with what the requirements are and kind of what's involved so that they can plan ahead. Look, just brief background on it. If you're located or plan to locate in one of our 3 counties, there's some other little bit of requirements. Several of you already have businesses, so you already be tied in with kind of in the system. The Alabama Department of Revenue is a registered business and so forth. If you're successful and you get a grant, we're going to distribute that in 2 phases, where as a winner, you'll get half of it up front, and then when you've spent that amount of money, you get the second $7,500. You can use it on any kind of business related expenses. There's no match. It's really flexible. It's basically, I mean, we have a little bit of risk that we're putting the money out there, but if you spend the first $7,500 according to your plan, then you'll receive the other $7,500. And then you're by being here in this virtual session, you've already done one of the requirements is to attend a free business seminar or training. But we always encourage, if you want to do more consultation, that's even better. But this does get you kind of that checked off the list. We're recording this, so some other people may be also watching it later to get that requirement. Then there's the application. There's an online application form that you'll do through Time Zone, and you'll submit your business plan. We tried to make it easy, but there are a few things that you have to check off when you go through kind of your on the application form, in addition to attaching your business plan. You won't really have to submit any financial requirements unless you make the interview round. So I mean, in a perfect world, we'd get a lot of business plans and everybody would benefit by writing a business plan. Some of them would make it to the next round because maybe some of them are readier. I mean, and our goal would be to do this again. And so if somebody isn't quite ready the first time we do it, maybe the second time around they will. But the ones who are ready would get an interview. And that's the point where we'd want to have you share some of your financial information. It's totally confidential. It would be shared with our committee on kind of on a base, on sort of, I can't remember the term, but it's like they look at it and then they give it back to you. They're not holding on to your financial information. And then that selection committee they're going to look at they're not that worried about an elaborate business plan. They're going to want to see how you're going to cash flow, what kind of impact it's going to have. We'll probably give some bonus points if we feel like you have some good growth potential. I mean, I always kind of pick on the insurance agents and on this, but I mean, we think it's great. We want insurance agents, obviously, but if it's sort of one person that's making a ton of money and never has to hire anybody else because they kind of do it all out of that, I mean, that's great, but we'd probably give a few extra points if there's a chance for you to, by growing, if that means you're going to hire a couple people. And that's sort of the general overview. You do not have to be a startup, but for the existing businesses, it has to be it has to be a new venture. It wouldn't be just a status quo what you're doing now. I mean, I was hearing from your introductions, I think there's opportunities to kind of do a new venture. A classic case, a sort of example we often mention is a restaurant is now going to do catering. And the business plan, maybe that's a bad idea sometimes. I mean, and so the business plan should help you evaluate that. Is this going to make money? Can I cash flow this? And if it looks like it is, then if it looks like it's going to make money, you'll have a plan to realize that. So that's kind of the background on why we're doing this and how you would compete in the business plan and where this fits in with our overall strategy.
Okay, thank you, Tom. And I also certainly glad to have everybody here this evening. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be here because starting up a business and particularly running a business is not only important to you and your family, but it's important to your employees. It's important to your local community, to the state of Alabama, and to our country. Because statistically, small businesses are the employment engines of our economy, and small businesses are the innovation leaders of our country. And so this evening, we're going to talk about several of the key activities involved in starting and running successful businesses. And so we'll start out with a journey about how to start a business in Alabama, which I suspect many of you have already been through this, and so most of it will probably look pretty familiar. After that, we'll talk a little bit about some of the strategies for business growth once you're in business. And then I will spend a fair amount of time on this planning component because a business plan is important for every business for a variety of different reasons. And we'll go through those reasons and we'll talk about the high points of putting together a business plan that's keyed on your success. And then finally, we'll have a short discussion about how you can go about funding a business start and or an expansion. And as Tom mentioned earlier, please feel free to ask questions throughout this. If anything comes up, it's not clear, you have a question, please just say, hey, I have a question. So this is the typical roadmap for starting a business anywhere, but we'll tailor it to Alabama. And the first part of it is something I guess most of you have been through, which is a personal readiness assessment. Do I have all the tools in my toolkit to start a business? And then the second part is, how feasible is my idea for me? And again, most of you all have been through this. And then the third part of the presentation will be this business plan component. But before we get to that, we'll also go over a startup checklist that's particular to Alabama. And again, it ought to look very familiar to just about everybody here because it sounds like you've been through that. So self-assessment is just what it says. It's just a kind of informal inventory, taking inventory of, do I have the necessary tools to actually start or run a business? If you were starting, say, like a heating and cooling service business, we would expect that you have education, certifications, and experience in heating and cooling systems. But to run a business, you need a lot of other tools in your toolbox. You need, are you a risk taker? Do you like challenges? Are you an inquisitive type of person? And perhaps most important, do you have a passion for the idea that you're pursuing? And that's a very important component because having a passion for what it is you're doing helps to carry you through the tough parts of either starting a business or running a business. So I imagine most of you have done some form of this, and so I encourage you to take another look at it. There are two critical points about self-assessment that again, I think most of you may have been through. And the first of this is, when you were starting your business, did you discuss this with your family? Because as you've all learned, there's a lot of long hours, and sometimes it's an all-consuming activity. There's a financial investment involved. Is the family on board with that? And then, as you're starting a business or as you're doing a business expansion, if it's significant, how are we going to cover household expenses until this business or this expansion starts earning a profit? And so the key thing is whether your family is a typical nuclear family, whether it's just a close friends, it's your parents, whatever, is everybody on board because of these aspects of starting business or doing a major expansion? The second part is kind of a self-assessment of what's my leadership capability. Am I the type of person who can set goals and then work to attain them? I suspect everyone here fits in that category. What's your leadership style? And then, are you the type of person who takes responsibility for your actions? And again, it sounds like these are probably the things that you've been through. The take responsibility is perhaps one of the more important points here, because as a business owner, the buck stops with you. Employees, customers, suppliers all look to you for decisions. And so being able to take responsibility for your decisions and your actions is a key point of being a successful leader. Now, the business feasibility part, again, sounds like most of you have been through this, but basically, this is an idea, or this is an activity of determining whether your idea for a business or for a significant expansion is really right for you. And what I mean by that is, I'm sure everybody here is familiar with a guy by the name of Elon Musk. Elon Musk, one of the things he wants to do is to send people to Mars in a rocket ship and then bring them back alive. Now, given Elon's education, his experience, his resources, all the number of technical things he's worked on and is working on, that idea of sending people to Mars and bringing them back, I think, is a perfectly feasible idea for Elon Musk. It would not be feasible for me because I have none of those things that would be required to get people there and back. So business ideas are particularly the ideas to understand if they're feasible for you. And so the way we do this, we set up some assumptions, some questions of what has to be true in order for my business to succeed. And these can be questions about what products and services to offer, who your target customers are, who your competitors are, what kind of industry are you in? Is it growing? Is it stationary? Is it shrinking? And then what's your competitive advantage in the industry and in the market that you're going to be in? And so typically we do market research to get information on customers, competitors, the industry, and that like. And market research is just the collection of data about all of those things in order to test our assumptions about what needs to be true to succeed. And of course, nowadays with the internet, market research is a lot easier for small business owners than it used to be. The other aspect of this is financial feasibility. And some of you might still be on this road of really discovering what the financial feasibility of your business is. One of the first things we want to know is, given everything we've talked about, products and services, markets, customers, the industry, is the business likely to be profitable? That's a key thing. But perhaps even more important than that is, are the projected profits enough to make the initial investment worth it to you? And that's certainly the case whether it's a business startup or if it's some significant type of expansion. Say if you're building a new building or something like that, that can be a major investment. And it's certainly smart to do the financials to find out if the projected profits from that expansion will make it worth all the effort that you'll put into that. And so a business plan, among other things, is really a critical and useful tool for answering these important questions. And we'll get to that a little bit later. So here's the checklist for getting started in Alabama. And most of you, I'm guessing, have been through this checklist all the way from ownership structure at the top, the legal structure of your business, how you sign up with the Alabama Secretary of State, your name selection, business licenses, insurance, bookkeeping and accounting, financing, and then of course, last but not least, are taxes at the local, state, and federal level. And I don't know if you've ever thought about it this way, but taxes are the place where the local, state, and federal governments, basically Uncle Sam, wants to become a partner with you in your success. And Uncle Sam is the type of person who never takes no for an answer. Any questions about this up to this point? Okay. So once you're in business, and most of you already are, there's a couple of different ways that you can go about growing a business. There's organic growth, where you start a business with a certain portfolio of products and services, and then over time, you increase the sales of those products and services to more and more of your target customers. Another strategy for business growth is expansion growth. And so some of the typical methods for business expansion are market expansion, which might be to find new applications for old products. I was just talking to someone the other day about an old product called WD-40, which maybe everybody has used. WD-40 started out as a spray lubricant, but it's found applications as a rust preventative. It's found applications as a rust protectant or a metal protectant by displacing water on metal products. There are even YouTube videos where people are using it as a polish on some metals. So that's a case of market expansion for old products. Also, within your company, you might develop new products or services for your customers. And so that's an example of using innovation in order to expand your business with new products and services. Now, another way to get new products and services into your business might be by acquisition of a product line from another company, or licensing products or even services to sell within the structure of your company. And typically you pay a license fee to whoever owns the products and services as you make sales within your business. And then of course there's geographic expansion. You might start a restaurant in one location, and then after a few years, start another restaurant in another location. and then on down the line, expanding that business by scaling it into new locations geographically. And in some cases, particularly in the restaurant industry, the motel industry, the idea of franchising, where you give others the opportunity to run knockoffs of your business for a fee, is another way to expand that business. And then, there is, of course, the opportunity to acquire another business. It can either be a business that's directly in your type of market, or it might be a business in a different market, and that presents you an opportunity to diversify what you do in your business. And then related to that are the opportunities to do mergers. If you owned a heating and cooling business in one town or one state, you might merge with a similar business in another state, and that's an expansion for both parties in that merger. Whatever type of expansion strategy you follow, there's some questions to consider as you go through the process of doing the expansion. And again, we come back to this idea and business feasibility test to see if the expansion the expansion makes sense for us and for our business where it is. Also, financial feasibility is an important factor. Even if you're just doing something like a market expansion, old products into new markets, there's usually costs involved with going into new markets, certainly marketing costs, maybe distribution costs, maybe shipping costs that you have to take on in order to be successful in that new application. And so those need to be factored in along with a consideration of what the profitability will be for that expansion. Also, in expansions, there are sometimes brand fidelity issues that come up. And this is where the brand image of your current business may or may not be, may not work with the brand image of a business that you're looking to acquire. Now, a really silly example of that would be Lindsay has a flower business, and someone comes up to her and says, I have this great septic pump out business opportunity for you. Would you like to acquire my business? I would wonder about the brand fidelity between combining two businesses like that together. And then in any kind of expansion strategy, particularly the more expensive ones, which might be acquisition of products and services, as well as whole business acquisitions and mergers, the issue of integration of the parts into a new whole becomes very, very critical. And certainly in the business acquisition industry, I think most of those people will tell you that integrate or failures to integrate properly is the leading cause of acquisition failure. The two parts are never put together in a seamless way so that you get a synergy out of the acquisition, and any potential synergy of that acquisition is lost because of the failure to properly integrate the parts together. Okay, so this takes us now into really the main topic of planning for success, and I'd like to start this off with talking about why a business plan is important. Certainly, if you're going to be a part of the Northwest EDA plan competition, it's important for that. But outside of that, there are numerous other reasons why a business plan is a critical key activity for a business success. And I'll just start off by talking about some small business success rates. More or less, if you looked at all of the businesses, small businesses started in 2024, by the time you got to 2029, 80% of those businesses will have failed. And by the time you get to 10 years out to 3034, 95% or more of those businesses will have failed. And it almost, with odds like that, it almost makes you think that, well, maybe I should take my money over to Louisiana and buy lottery tickets or something. But the good news is, despite all the different ways that a small business and actually any business can fail, the root cause of most of those failures is a failure to plan. People get into businesses without doing any planning, and then they hit some big potholes in the road, and that's what causes problems. So by making a commitment to do a business plan, you're taking a proactive step towards missing the root cause of most business failures. Another attractive aspect of doing a business plan is it's easier to build your business mentally without risk and to work out any problems or ideas in that mental representation of your business than it is after you are in business. And just as an example, several years ago, I had a fellow, he wanted to open a restaurant, and he had a really good concept, and he was looking at a metro area of about 150,000 population. And so we did a business plan that he could take to a bank to support a loan application. And when we got through the plan and did the financial projections, they only looked so-so. So we went back and looked at the plan and looked at all of our assumptions and everything. And what we eventually figured out was he had not planned for enough seating capacity. Relative to the total investment involved to get the restaurant up and running, he did not have enough seating capacity. So that was easy to take care of. Just expanded the seating capacity. This meant that he would have to look for a larger building than he originally planned to. And of course, there would probably be a higher lease rate for that. But once we ran through the projections with this modified plan, the financials looked exactly where they wanted to be. And he ended up getting the bank loan, and he ended up getting in business. And so the moral of the story is it's a lot easier to make those changes on paper than it is once you're already in business. Also, the business plan provides you a roadmap for business management when you are in business. If you spend a lot of time and effort putting together a business plan that lays out the roadmap for success, then now this is something that you can follow as you're starting your business and you're growing your business. And it can not only help guide your decisions during the growth of your business, but it helps keep you accountable and to let you see how well your assumptions worked out in the real world. Also, the business plan provides lenders and investors with the information they need to make an investment decision as to whether they want to invest in your business or not. So, in terms of business plans, there's a lot of different plan formats. One of the most common ones is a prose type format. This looks like a term paper that you might write in school. It's the type of format that you might submit to a bank or to another private investor in order to see if let them determine if they want to invest in your business. Also, business plans can be put together in bullet point form with just the highlighted ideas and not structured in a prose format. Similar to bullet points are business plans in pitch deck format, which is like a PowerPoint presentation. And that's usually what's used to pitch venture capitalists, angel investors, also sometimes used, well, not sometimes, actually fairly often used in business plan competitions where uh, uh, innovation companies might invite 15 to 20 people to come in and pitch their plans, and they're going to invest in 5 of them. And so typically that'll be done with pitch decks because it's a very efficient way to get the key ideas out so that people can get an idea of what it is you're doing. And then there are custom formats. And at some point, you'll need to look at the Northwest Alabama Small Business Plan Competition Program Guidelines. I have a copy right here because they have their format specified in that booklet. Whatever the format of a business plan you're going to use, business plans are typically built on 5 key planning areas. First is a concise and precise business description, along with the key goals of the business. And so things like what products and services we offer, what markets we're going to be working in, who our target customers are, just as an overview, and some other details about our business. That's what makes up the business description. You typically write that down first because that's going to guide the rest of the planning efforts, and the key goals, which are typically financial goals, they'll come at the end. So one of the key planning areas in a business plan is the marketing plan. How are you going to go to market with your business to educate customers what products and services you're offering and why they should purchase those from you? And the details of that plan, which we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, the details of that plan should align with the business description that you've already drafted. Second planning component is the operations plan. How will we actually run the business? And again, the details of that plan need to align with and support the business description that we've drafted. And then thirdly comes a management plan. This deals with business ownership and employees and managing employees. And again, this needs to be aligned with the business description. And then finally, this leads to the financial plan, where at the end we develop financial projections about the business, and we use inputs, and this has to be aligned with the business description, and it actually delivers the key goals that are going to go into the business description. And it does this by getting cost inputs from the marketing plan, from the operations plan, and then from the management plan. So we'll talk briefly about each of these areas, but as you flesh all these areas out, then what you'll have to do after that is to merge it into the business format that is in the Northwest EDA document. Any questions on that? Okay.
And Warren, I'll just say quickly, the elements that we have in the Northwest Alabama Business Plan Competition, it's really to have the competitors think about these 5 key components of a powerful business plan. We're not going to get that hung up on formalities, but we do want all these parts to get back to are they gonna make a sufficient profit and kind of bottom line type stuff. So it's not like it's not like a bureaucratic thing where we expect everything to be a certain way. It's just that all these different things have been thought about.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. So whether you use a live plan, which Tom has just mentioned earlier, or if you do it kind of the old-fashioned way with a computer. And the way it works is in each of the keys, we're going to ask ourselves some key and critical questions related to each planning area. And if you work through Live Plan, it prompts you with the questions. The presentation or the handouts that we've offered actually have the same kinds of questions in them if you want to use the handout as the way to do your business plan. So in each planning area, marketing, operations, management, financial, there'll be a number of key questions, and the information that you develop relative to those questions in the context of your business description, that gives you the information for developing the full plan. And so I just make a note that Live Plan is similar. And if you've ever done your taxes on TurboTax or some other type of software platform like that, the process will seem very familiar. So let's talk about a moment about the business description and goals. Basically, we want to be able to write down so that we can communicate to others what kind of business that we're starting. What are the primary activities of our business to generate revenue? And what is our year 3 revenue goal, our gross margin goal, and net income goal? Those are the typical metrics, financial metrics that make up the goal part of the business description. And I'll explain later why we tend to focus on year 3 of being in business or year 3 after doing a significant expansion. And also in the business description, we ought to be able to make or offer what our value proposition is. And a value proposition is a concise statement that describes what kind of value you deliver to customers when they pay you money. And if you think back to the example of a cooling and heating service company, you can say, well, that company's in the business of fixing air conditioners, fixing heaters, and installing new systems. And that's true. That's the business that they're in. But the value they deliver to their customers is to give those customers the opportunity to fine-tune the environments of their homes to suit their particular preferences. That's the value that the customers are looking for. And so the business that can offer that value that most closely aligns with customers' preferences and can do it at a price that the customer can afford and can do it in a way that's most convenient to the customer, that's the company that gets the business. And so whatever kind of business we're in, we're delivering value to a customer. That's why they do business with us. And so we ought to be able to articulate what that value is that we're delivering to them. The next planning part is the marketing plan. And in putting this together, some of the questions we're going to think about are, what are our key products and services? Now, typically we think of a product as a tangible thing and a service as another tangible thing. But, things like packaging, presentation, color, mode of delivery, terms of sale, these are all part of the product that we're delivering to someone. And those are all parts of the things that people take into consideration when they buy something. And so being able to understand what our true product or service is important from a marketing standpoint. We also want to know what's our target market. If you're in a restaurant business, you must have a target market that you're after, and so you want to be able to articulate what that is. And you may have target customers that you're trying to attract to your business. People of certain ages, people of certain gender, people of certain income potential, people of certain education. All of these are the kinds of things we can use to describe who the target customer is that we're trying to go after with our business. And then we need to understand who our competition is, both the direct competition and indirect competition. If you're in the business of selling motorcycles, another motorcycle dealership is your direct competition. The Chevrolet dealer down the street is your indirect competition because that Chevrolet dealer is also competing with you for a customer's transportation dollar. So we want to understand our competition, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and what opportunities we have to be competitive against them. And then all of these considerations feed into what kind of a market media strategy we're going to have. If we know who our target customers are, we can probably determine what media channels they use to get information. And when we know what those media channels are, that's where we can focus our marketing messages to attract those customers and to try to turn them into paying customers. Operations plan, like I said earlier, has to do with actually running the business. Are we going to be a brick and mortar or an online business or both? Do we need to lease a building or build a building? And what's the timing for either of those? And most importantly, what's the cost involved? Do we need certain equipment in our business? Do we need specialized equipment in our business? Is it difficult to obtain? What's the cost of that equipment for running our business? Do we have any environmental issues? Are there any special permitting issues that we have to be concerned about? For example, automobile or vehicle collision shops that do painting fall under both state and federal regulations in terms of pollution laws. Special permitting issues. Some businesses, like a medical business, which deals with biohazardous waste, may have to get a special permit for handling that waste. And then what other approvals do we need at the federal, state, county, and municipal level? All of you are in business, so you've been through these. But if you venture into an expansion opportunity, you may have to revisit these things again. Any questions on that? Okay. And then the management plan. This deals with ownership. Who is or are the owners? If there's more than one owner, typically you want to have an operator's agreement to describe what the responsibilities are of each owner and the like. And particularly if you're going to go to a bank for a loan, they're going to typically require that you have an operator's agreement. And these especially for bank loans, it's probably best to have retain an attorney to draft one of these. Also, we get into the issue of what kind of employees do we need? How many employees do we need? And are they going to be full-time, part-time? Are they going to be contract employees? And then what wage structure will we have for our employees, and what kind of benefits will we plan to offer? Also, with employees comes the issue of, are any special skill sets required? And does that mean you have to provide training or send employees out for training? And what's the business risk if it turns out to be difficult to find or attract those kinds of employees? Then that brings us down to the financial plan. And the bottom line goal of the financial plan is the creation of the pro forma statements that will provide a 3-year projection of how the business is going to perform. And typically this requires a profit and loss statement, 3 years, a cash flow statement over those 3 years. And if you're going to a bank to apply for a loan, they'll probably want you to have what's called a sources and uses document or statement that shows where the money's coming from to start a business or to expand a business, and where that money will be applied in starting the business or used in the expansion. And then there's some other financial considerations we have to think about in order to be able to put these statements together. And that is, how do we as a business get paid? Do we accept cash? Do we take credit? Do we take debit? And there are fees involved with those. Or do we give terms to our customers like net 30 days, net 60 days, something like that, which has a huge bearing on cash flow. Likewise, how do we pay our suppliers? Do we pay them up front when we buy something from them? Do they give us terms like net 30 days, net 60 days, which also has a huge bearing on what our cash flow situation looks like. I had a client several years ago. He was in the plumbing business. He started out in the service part of that business, and most of his service sales were either cash, credit, or debit, sometimes checks. He didn't offer any terms on plumbing repairs. He then ventured out into new construction, where he would do rough-in plumbing for new houses, new apartment complexes, and all that. and that's where he got into trouble, because his agreement with his supplier was he paid for his materials when he got them. He also then paid for the labor to do the rough-in plumbing, and once the city okayed by inspection the rough-in plumbing, he got paid 60 days later by the builder. So he had a huge amount of money out of pocket up front to start a rough plumbing job, and he literally didn't get paid until about 75 days later. He had horrendous cash flow problems. And when he came to see me and we looked at that, I said, go to your supplier and see if you can get 30 days. Well, he ended up getting 60 days. And so his cash flow problems just evaporated overnight because of that ability to put his outlay more in line for when money was coming in. And then also in the financial plan, if we're getting a loan or we have some other kind of investment that's going to be made in the business, we want to acknowledge that in there also, along with any terms that are involved, because that'll be an important part of putting the financial projections together. And then finally, in terms of financial projections, we typically do 3-year projections by month, even if the lenders or investors only ask for 2. I've only seen that a few times. Mostly they want 3. But 3 is an important time frame because of the way a business evolves or the way a significant expansion project evolves. And what I mean by that is, when you're starting a business or a major expansion, usually the first year is pretty difficult. You've got low sales, operations may not work that well, there's kinks to work out, mistakes are made, employees don't understand their jobs as well as they could. And so the first year can just be a really tough time starting out in a business or with a major expansion. Typically, the second year, everything gets better. More sales are coming in. Employees understand their jobs now. Everything starts to work better, and you start to generate a decent income. And then very often, by the third year, everything is running the way it should be. The business is running at or near capacity. And so that actually makes the third year the easiest year to model in terms of financial projections. And once you've got that third year figured out, then going back to year 2 and year 1, it's a pretty simple step of just making some assumptions of what those might look like in your particular type of business. Any questions on that? In the handout file that you have, there's a lot more detail on the financial projections, and there's an example of of how to actually do a year 3 projection. Typically, investors, whether they're banks, private investors, venture capitalists, angel investors, they want to see a profit and loss cash flow, and particularly for the banks, they want a sources and uses statement. Some things to really watch out for, and you all maybe have been through some of these, but maybe you haven't been through all of them. Particularly for business startups and even for major expansions. Be very careful about signing leases, construction contracts before you have loan approvals or whatever other money you're waiting on, and government approvals. I had a client 5 or 6 years ago who was starting a daycare business. Found a really nice building in a downtown area of a small city. Had a construction contract set up to do some tenant renovations. Went to see the city council, went to see their planning group, got all the approvals, and signed a lease. Had the builder start the tenant improvements, and some obscure bureaucrat shows up and says, you don't have enough off-street parking spaces. And she went to the city council to try to get a variance on that. They turned her down flat. So she's stuck with a 3-year lease and a builder who started work because of that. Now, by the grace of God, I think she came out of that okay. She found an even better building, a bigger building, several employees, and in that period, another daycare center shut down. So she got all of their clients. So she actually came out very, very well. But it was a scary situation for a while. Also, where leases for real estate and equipment leases and operating agreements are concerned, very often banks will want to review those to make sure that their interests are protected. If you don't give them a chance to review that, they may not make the loan until they can review it. And banks typically will not accept financial projections that pay the owner or owners a salary. They expect you to make that out of the net income of the business. And then in terms of a business plan for banks and investors, like I said, they usually like the prose type of business format, and they really only want to see about 2 to 4 pages of narrative because they don't want to read a book. And so they'll just take the book and set it to the side. And then the key thing that banks are looking for is, does this plan tell me how they will be able to repay the loan and earn a living? So that's kind of the bottom line of what the bank's trying to get out of your business plan. And then last of all, this really applies to business startups and expansions. Do not make any large purchases that either consume cash that you've listed as an asset on a personal financial statement, or don't encumber yourself with a big new loan before you get that bank loan approval. Another example, I had a lady who wanted to open a pizza restaurant, and it was in an area that was way underserved with pizza restaurants, and her business plan was based on 3 pizza restaurants that a cousin of hers owned in another state. I mean, it was a slam dunk. And 2 days before she was go to the bank to submit the plan and to fill out the application for the loan, her husband came home and he had bought a brand new pickup truck. And back then it was like a $50,000 pickup truck, and he financed it all, and that blew him out of the water. No business. Okay. So in terms of startups and expansions, there's a number of traditional ways to go about financing those. Certainly, if you have savings, that's a very common way to get businesses started. as well as second mortgages on homes. Of course, a second mortgage on a home carries some risk, but it's used pretty routinely. Family and friends can help loan money for a business startup, maybe not so much for an expansion. And then, of course, there's crowdfunding opportunities, and Kickstarter is one of the more common crowdfunding opportunities where you can invite people literally from all around the world to chip in and be a part of your business. In the bank loan world, SBA backed bank loans are critical for the small business industry because the SBA comes in and assumes some of the risk of the loan. And so that makes banks more likely to lend money to small businesses, whereas they might not do that if they had to carry all the risk. And those loans are good for equipment, for working capital, for real estate, and for buildings. Venture capitalists and angel investors are two parts of a group that are looking for young, high growth companies to invest in. They invest equity and rather than issuing debt. And then last of all, grants, which are not too common in the for-profit small business industry, but Northwest EDA is offering such grants. Any questions on the financing aspects? All righty. That wraps up what I have to offer this evening. Alabama SBDC is working in concert with Northwest EDA, and that is our website there. And there's a ton of information on that website, as well as opportunities to work with consultants to help you in any aspect of your business. And again, I thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this evening.